When you think of downhill biking in video games, your first thought is probably Trials. But Descenders is an entirely different beast. In fact, it's different from racing games, period. Yes, your primary activity is racing down a hill at blistering speeds on a bike, but the core of what makes this game tick has more in common with the roguelikes that inspire it than any of its racing ilk. Confused yet? Watch on, and I'll explain what I'm talking about. As always, I'm Alex, and this is First 5, where I ask if games are worth your time, not your money. I played a game for 5 hours, and I'm gonna tell you if those were 5 hours well spent. And today we're going downhill biking in Descenders. Descenders has vaguely floated on the edge of my radar for a while, but when I finally did see a trailer for this game, there was one thing that instantly caught my attention: its sense of momentum. This game sells kinetic motion better than almost anything else I've ever seen. The rush of speed going down Descenders hills is more intense than going 150 in Forza or Burnout alike, and that is not a sentence I ever thought I would utter about anything, much less a game about downhill biking. Everything else about this game aside, that feeling, that breathtaking sense of momentum alone, is a feat worth celebrating. Descenders knocks game feel out of the goddamn park. But before we get too ahead of ourselves, let's lay out what Descenders is. Descenders is a racing roguelike? So anytime you go out to hit some trails, you essentially get a randomly generated FTL-style campaign map, and every node on the map is a different semi-randomly generated race. Every node has 3 ratings that govern how the race is constructed: steepness, curves, and stunts. So if the curves rating is super high, you'll get a ton of curves. And if steepness is maxed out, you can expect to hit some blisteringly high speeds as you race down what's practically a cliff. On every map there will be some special nodes, like sponsor maps that have their own special construction parameters, or the driver cam maps that force you to use the normally optional first-person perspective. As a small aside, the first-person camera is actually a lot of fun to use, and the entire game feels twice as intense from this perspective, but it's also incredibly disorienting the moment you try to do a flip. But no matter what you find out there on the map, your ultimate goal is going to be the boss track, which features a massive stunt jump right out of a movie. Jumping over bottomless canyons, leaping over trains, riding up the side of a pyramid, that sort of thing. The boss jumps are pretty damn cool, but they can also be a little picky, requiring you to hit them at just the right speed. Go too slow and you'll undershoot and hit the thing you're supposed to be going over. Go too fast and you'll land too hard on the other side and wipe out. And then, once you beat the boss jump, you're on to the next region. Instead of trying to race people for the fastest time, career runs are all about making it through a series of 4 regions while netting as many points as possible doing 6 stunts. And you have a limited number of lives to do it in. Wipe out too often and your run ends early. You can buffer your life counter, however. Every race gives you a bonus objective, usually asking you to complete a course without ever breaking or pull a specific stunt. Fulfill the bonus objective and you get an extra life. You'll also be chasing high scores for more than just a high spot on the leaderboard. As you net more points, you unlock more support crew, who act as passive bonuses for your current run. They'll do stuff like adjust the track's difficulty or make you do tricks faster. They're certainly useful, but if I'm being honest, it's a little hard to demonstrably show their effect on your current run. Sure, this one support crewman might make it so that you can land a little harder before you wipe out, but how do you even measure hardness of impact, and how far does that buff nudge the line? All of this was already well and good, and I was starting to fall into a steady rhythm with Descenders, but then about 4 hours in, I unlocked the Career Plus mode, and I was pleasantly surprised to discover that instead of being the same races on a harder difficulty, the mode actually featured 4 additional unique regions, giving you some needed variety with 2 different unique sequences of tracks you can try to work through. Every region has its own personality, even beyond its aesthetics. For example, the canyon seems to be a speed demon's wet dream that's all about straight open paths that are incredibly steep. The desert notably has no stunt ramps, but has a ton of hills you can pull tricks off on anyway. And the forest is a nightmare hellscape of hairpin S-curves where going over 50 at any point is flirting with instant disaster. Alright, so that's a lot of different stuff going on in this game, but how does it all play? Well, when you combine each region's personal quirks with the different randomized maps and the special modifiers you occasionally run into, Descenders actually has a great amount of variety. You'll never run the same course twice, so each track depends more on reacting appropriately to what the game throws at you than memorizing exactly where and how you need to drift around each curve. Because of that, there's also a major focus on maintaining control. If you start hitting 70 kilometers per hour, you're going to go careening off into the woods no matter how good your reaction speed is, so you need to focus on keeping your speed at a reasonable level and staying in control of your bike at all times. As the tips often tell you, Descenders is not a race. You can go down the hill at any speed you want, but if you do it faster and take more risks, you'll net more points, which means more support crew and a better spot on the leaderboard. But if you push it too hard, you'll lose control and sail off the track into the woods, where you're almost guaranteed to wipe out, or you'll go flying impossibly high off a ramp and have no hope of surviving the landing. And I love that dynamic. The game is much more focused on survival and risk versus reward mechanics and playing smart than it is about being the fastest, hardest drifting downhill racer. And that continues to extend out to the roguelike metagame as well. Do you pick harder courses that'll net more points? Do you take on that danger zone track that gives bonus points but you'll lose double the health when you wipe out? Do you go for that challenge that'll give you extra health if you go 65 kilometers per hour? Do you even risk trying to go that fast? Descenders is constantly trying to egg you on and get you to do something risky and dumb that'll get you in trouble, and I love that feeling of constantly trying to push my luck and gambling that I can totally handle that insane track with a million S-curves. Oh, and did you know that this game has multiplayer? It's basically just an excuse to do the exact same thing in a lobby with your friends, but hey, everything is more fun with your friends, so give it a shot. But we need to wrap this up. What do you get out of 5 hours with Descenders? I'd say you get the full package. Admittedly, there are still 2 regions I haven't seen yet, but this is another one of those games where you'll be doing the same thing at hour 20 that you're doing at hour 1. But it has the replayability to let you keep playing for as long as you want to, and I definitely want to keep playing. I'm having an absolute blast with Descenders. I'll admit that racing games aren't really my purview, but this is the most fun I've had with one in years. And that's probably because it does a lot of things differently from other racing games. This game is incredibly smart, I wholeheartedly recommend it. And speaking of stunt bikers, you might want to check out my review of Future Grind, a Tron-themed biking game that also sees you pulling stunts in pursuit of a high score. Or you can go way the hell back to my review of Trailblazers, a multiplayer-focused racing game that sadly didn't get the community it needed to shine. Either way, I hope you enjoyed this first 5 review. If you did, maybe consider hitting that subscribe button. If you're looking for games that value your time and don't pad themselves, I'm your guy. Thanks for watching this far, and I'll see you all next week.